stress management skills. What a great lunchtime topic, right? I do want to acknowledge that the funding for this training and a lot of the other trainings, maybe that some of you have attended in the past, comes from HRSA. And this is our HOPE WWR grant, so Health Occupations Providing Excellence in Workforce Wellness and Resiliency. And it's a partnership not only between our college, but obviously with AHEC, and also we have partners in nursing and pharmacy here on campus too. And so our objectives for today, so we've got 4 objectives. One, describing the impact of stress on the body and the brain, then kind of walking through some evidence-based stress management techniques, which I'm hopeful that's why a lot of you have signed up for today. Then thinking about how we integrate those skills into our practice. And then our last one is applying some of those concepts to case scenarios. And that last objective we've sort of infused throughout in the hopes of, even though there's a lot of you on here, hoping to make this as interactive a presentation as possible. So we're excited to be here. I'm going to turn it over to Scott, who's going to kickstart us off talking about stress.
Thank you very much, Aiden. I think what I would like to do is invite people, I know you're on your lunch break, to unmute and also to participate in this. I think that we all have a lot to be able to contribute to this presentation. I don't think that I'm an expert in the biology of stress. I do have some coping skills, and I also think a lot of people here have a lot to offer as well. So I'm really hoping that we can all participate. Stress, let's kind of define what stress is. So either through the chat or else perhaps unmute if you feel brave enough to. And I'd love to hear what people would define stress as, so that we can come to kind of a shared understanding of what we're going to decide this stress thing is that we're discussing.
For me, I get very stressed out in the mornings trying to get my daughter up and out on time for school. That's one thing I deal with Monday through Friday. That's very stressful.
Yeah.
So what do you stress is? Here we go. We see some stuff in the chat here. I'm trying to keep up with it, Aiden. Maybe you can. Our body's response to change, absolutely. Shingles related to stress, so physiological stuff, feeling overwhelmed. Yeah, absolutely. Think an inability to focus, absolutely. Positive and negative, we're going to talk a little bit about both of those today. So I'm glad somebody brought that up. You're a slide ahead of me, actually. Maybe you should be up here doing this presentation with me. Too much stress leading to distress, which is really the focus of what today is. You know, we have positive and negative stress. We're going to talk about that in a minute, but we're really worried about the long-term effects of chronic stress. That's really what this entire presentation is about. Disruption and equilibrium. I like that. I like that. Yeah. How we respond. I like that as well. Transference, work-related things definitely tie into this. It has direct impacts on physiology. Although that's not my world of expertise. I'm not a doctor, I'm a social worker, so that's not my world of expertise. We are going to talk a little bit about that and what that looks like, absolutely. Emotional and physical, yes. So, you know, when we look at this idea of stress, right, we think about a couple of things. Stress in 2 ways. Stress as mental and stress as physical, right? So if we look at stress, it's our body's response to cues in the environment that cause either a mental kind of response or a physiological response to what's going on. Stress is necessary, absolutely, absolutely. So we're going to talk a little bit about this. So we want stress. All stress isn't bad, right? We have positive stress, which we would call eustress. Chat, unmute. Can anybody give me some examples of positive stressors in their lives? Things that are stressful, but they see as positive, something that might be helpful. Stress.
Moving and getting a new house.
Yeah, that's exciting. Congratulations if you got to have that experience recently.
Marriage
Can be, yeah. Certainly a healthy marriage could have some positive stress in a more unhealthy marriage could tie into that more chronic toxic stuff we'll talk about later, for sure. Loss of a loved one, that's more stress that might be motivating exercise, absolutely.
Transitions.
A transition, maybe in a positive direction, might create some positive stress, absolutely.
Getting ready for a vacation.
A vacation, preparing for something, I heard someone say, a long walk maybe.
The alarm clock, making us get up in the morning.
The alarm clock, yeah, absolutely.
Kids.
Kids, sure, absolutely. I'm a father to a toddler, almost 3-year-old, so there can be some moments of positive stress, right? When he's climbing on something and has a success, and then my heart stops for just a second. So yeah, positive stress isn't always bad. So we saw in the chat that stress isn't always a bad thing. I was a soccer coach for years, and I love that. There was a lot of stress involved, but I always consider it to be positive stress. Exercise. I'm a runner, that there's stress on the body as a result. There's positive stress, but that kind of stress tends to go away, right? It's not bad. It's short-lived, it's short-term. Children going off to college, ultimately you adjust to that, absolutely. Our concern here is really in today's presentation is with the negative stress, the distress, right? And we can look at both acute or episodic, like it's happening in this very moment. It could be happening with your patient. It could be happening because of your job or your conditions. And then what our biggest concern is the chronic or the toxic stress. So, and you know, chronic toxic stress has long-term physiological consequences. So not only mental health related stuff, but also physiological. My background is in mental health. I've been in private practice for about 15 years. I've been teaching now, or I've been up at the university as an instructor now for just under a year. So this is a career change for me. There's been some stress involved. Somebody mentioned a transition, but it's not always bad stress. Some of it is positive stress. There is some other stress involved at times. So when you think of distress, what are some of the things people think of? Spousal issues, relationships can be. We heard how relationships can both be beneficial and lead to positive stress. They can also lead to negative stress. Feelings, emotions like despair, absolutely. Unhealthy work environments, absolutely. Divorce, death, financial struggles, absolute. Gambling, loss of job, family issues, most definitely. All of these. Owning a business, for sure. Secondary traumas, for sure. We're all in the helping professions, right? We're nurses, we're social workers, we're in the pharmacy world. You are dealing with secondary trauma. You're dealing with vicarious trauma based on your job and the nature of your job. So that creates stress, absolutely. Symptoms. So let's kind of work our way through this. When you experience stress, we experience stress in 4 different areas. Physical symptoms. This is the thing that I found the most interesting. Your body does not know when it experiences stress, whether there's a bear in the room, and whether your flight or fight system is kicking in because you have a threat that you need to run or hide from, or whether you're looking at your checkbook and it's not black anymore, it's red. Your body experiences that emotion and that experience of stress the same. So yeah, balancing work life, home life, chores, finances, absolutely. Those are all stressors. So what are some physical symptoms people recognize? When you feel stressed, how do you feel it in your body? Headaches, panic attacks. Oh, wow, look at this. Tense, sleeplessness. Oh my gosh, it's just flying. I can't even keep up with it. Tired, anxiety, shortness of breath, stomach pains, heart palpitations, hungry, irritable, sweaty hands, fatigue. Yeah, lack of sleep. I'm right there with you. That's what gets me every time. It might trigger other existing conditions. They could be physiological, hair falling out. Absolutely. High blood pressure, most definitely. So those are like physical symptoms, right? Those are physiological. Things like your heart racing, things like feeling short of breath, those are short term. And then things like your hair falling out and other things like that, those can be longer term. Behaviors, I was about to say, so what are some behaviors? You might lose motivation. When you feel stressed, there are certain behavioral patterns that people get involved in. A loss of appetite, sure, that's frequent, yeah.
Avoiding the issue.
Most definitely.
Some people are saying arguments, yep.
Avoiding tasks, most definitely. Other risky behavior, sure. Substance use could be other things, other problematic behaviors. Not exercising, most definitely. You might feel more impatient with your clients. Gambling, anger, yeah. So now think about your moods. What moods dominate when you're feeling stressed? Sadness, worry, anxiety, fear, definitely fear, hopelessness, anger, yes. And again, anger and fear tie in together, right? They tie in together because they're part of the sympathetic nervous system, which is our fight or flight nervous system. It's geared up for fighting and running. So that's that run, fear, freeze, and that fight, anger, irritability. And again, we're not talking about short-term acute stress that goes away short-term. We're talking about long-term, our system being engaged. As we've seen in the chat, you are in couples, you're in marriages, you have kids, you have finances, you have businesses, you have patients. These are high stress jobs. So it's kind of like our systems can turn on and stay on throughout the day. And that's where that becomes a problem. All right, last but not least, let's think about how your thinking changes. How does your thinking change when you're under a lot of stress? Racing thoughts, they get more negative, less rational. You're always thinking the worst, that catastrophic thinking. You get frantic, absolutely. You can't clarify your thoughts. They're sporadic, can't focus. Yeah. Negative self-talk, blaming, whoopsie. Difficulty problem solving, yeah, we lock in, right? We lock in on one answer and that's the only answer. That's how I know I'm totally locked up in emotion. Bad thoughts about other people, paranoia, most definitely. Yeah. So this stress has all kinds of symptoms, right? I don't need to tell you, you all experience this, from physical symptoms to behavioral symptoms. It alters our moods. It alters the way we view the world, ourselves, and how we think. So what this is to say, and I'm not going to get into all this is not my forte. I can get into it enough to be dangerous, but that's about it. I'll probably give you some inaccurate information, which I don't want to do. But stress is a physiological response to something going on in the brain, right? We have events that occur in our daily lives. And we have this physiological stress response that begins in a part of our brain known as the hypothalamus, right? And this area of the brain controls your mood, it controls motivation, it controls fear. All things we saw in the chat, right? We saw lack of motivation, we saw fear, we saw moods, all of this. You're all very familiar with this experience. And the hypothalamus sets off this little alarm that goes off within the body, and it tells the pituitary glands, or it sends signals to the pituitary glands, which then communicate with the adrenal glands, which release a surge of hormones. And the two main hormones, as you can see on the slide, are adrenaline and cortisol. Adrenaline, how do you feel? Anybody who's had a surge of adrenaline, what does that feel like? What does that surge of adrenaline feel like? More energy, ramped up, yeah. Panic, rush of energy, hyper focus, absolutely. Your heart starts racing, yeah. Yeah, I used to say, I remember the one time that I really know that that all kicked in for me. I was in a very, very close to, it could have been a pretty serious accident on a bicycle. And I remember feeling like Superman. I remember thinking I could jump over like a skyscraper now. So when all these hormones get released, they then immediately start to have, physiological changes that occur within our body, right? Our breathing and our heart rate start to pick up and quicken, right? Cortisol starts to change the metabolism of your body. It starts converting things like breaking down molecules and converting sugar so that the body has energy so that it can like kick into gear. I mean, like this has this massive physiological change. That's why they call feelings. Emotions are feelings. You can feel them. Stress is the body's response to stimuli. It's emotional. It has a physical component. This is where it becomes problematic. The release of these hormones creates inflammation. Now, I know you all are kind of like, keep your ear to the ground to the news and some other things. What's kind of the medical world saying about inflammation these days? If you follow journals or news articles, what are they saying about inflammation in the body? It can cause autoimmune disorders, autoimmune problems. You may have heard some of this stuff from your doctor. It can kill you. It definitely creates problems down the road. Pain could create cancer. Yes, it's a leading cause of cancer, absolutely. Long-term health effects, mental, physical, yes. Major cause of many medical issues. Everything's tied up. It can take years off your life. Inflammation, here we go. See, you all know this. We all know this. Heart issues, it damages cells, right? Stress over time at high levels creates cellular changes, physiological changes. Things that can tie in with allergies and asthma, gastrointestinal issues, a silent killer, cardiovascular diseases. We saw high blood pressure earlier. Insulin resistance, which can lead to diabetic issues, hypertension, increases in abdominal fat, which as we learn, that the more abdominal fat you have, that's a precursor for all kinds of problems down the road as you get older. Autoimmune disorders, bowel diseases, osteoarthritis. My mom to this day has rheumatoid arthritis, and she thinks a lot of it has to do with her stress level that she went through when she was younger and kind of like her career and some of the things that she was involved in. So what does this mean? This means to us, and this is something that I really truly do believe, that as helping professionals that have jobs that are high stress, where we're dealing with people's problems, where we are literally not only having to carry our day-to-day problems in our marriages, with our kids, with our spouses and our relationships, with our friends, but we're also having to deal with our clients' problems, that it becomes really important to us to sort of figure out how to disarm this system some. Because again, what we're talking about is the chronic, long-term effects of high levels of stress. So I think about this in two ways. I think about this as lifestyle change, wellness, achieving a work-life balance, whatever you want to call it, but attempts at integrating healthy behaviors into our day-to-day life that will help reduce our body's susceptibility to stress, as well as acute coping skills you can use in the moment. So that if you're experiencing a bunch of stress, like, I don't know, like 5 minutes before you have to give a lecture in front of 400 people, you have some skills that you can actually use that might help bring that down enough so that you can actually access the parts of your brain that you need to do a speech like this, right? So as we think about this, I want you to be thinking about this in a couple of ways. I want you to be thinking about, what are your triggers? How do you know when stress is increasing? And how are we going to build new ways of dealing with stress? So if you want to unmute, I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you want to use the chat, that's been doing well when I can keep up with it. What do you recognize as your triggers? What are the things that you know stress you out? These might be things you can't even get away from. You just know they stress you out. Feeling your heart rate going? You want to be bigger than your triggers. I love that. I love that. A difficult client, being lost. Oh, sure. Traffic. Yeah. Work, stress, home life, deadlines, insecurity, last minute requests, headaches, having to do mundane tasks over and over again, not sleeping enough. I'm right there with you. Systemic barriers in life, absolutely. Money, oh yeah, these are things that aren't going away. And again, I go back, our brain doesn't know it's not a bear. It doesn't know that, our body doesn't know the difference. It's all stress. These are things, if you look, that aren't going away. There are triggers, they're the things that cue stress in our lives. These are things that are all over the news. They're all over the newspaper. They're all over social media. They're all over every part of our day-to-day discourse. They're here. You cannot get away from these things. So our brain is constantly being bombarded by this information. Our bodies are being bombarded by this. And whether we realize it or not, we sometimes can have these physiological responses that kick in our sympathetic nervous system, and it stays kicked in because we don't know how to disarm it. So how do you know when your stress is getting to a point where it's problematic? Again, we've already defined there is some stress that is beneficial. It's not all bad. How do you know when your stress is getting to a place where it's problematic? Can't sleep, irritability, sleep, short fuse, difficulty focusing, headache, being mean to people you care a lot about or love.
Distracted, migraines, getting sick, feeling hot, nervous, afraid, anxious.
Doom scrolling, like avoiding dealing with anything and just like trying to just like create your own little world that you don't have anything going on. Yeah. Ruminating, feeling on edge, absolutely. Like you can't get down. We've got some stuff we're going to go over that's literally designed for that. You can't make a decision. That sometimes happens to me. Yeah, so these are all signs of when stress has become problematic in our lives. And when you think about these things, these are really what the body is starting to kind of shut some of this stuff down. It can't focus because it's dedicating energy to the sympathetic nervous system. Again, the sympathetic nervous system is all about flight or fight. It's not about rational decision making. That's why problem solving, focus, all this other stuff, forget it. It's all going out the window. You can't do it when your body's engaged in that way. And when it's long term, is where it becomes problematic. As I was getting ready for this, one of the things Ayla and I were talking about was about a year ago, I got this watch. And I got the watch because it actually has a measure of stress on it. So for the last year, I have worn this thing like religiously because it gives me stress ratings. I can see what happens to my body when I'm not sleeping well. I can see when I overexercise or if I decide to do an extra hard workout, what my stress level looks like. And then I can see how it affects things like sleep and how it affects things like other aspects of my biology. And it's really been an amazing thing to see. It by itself has provoked all kinds of lifestyle changes because I'm like, wow, if I do these little things, I do have a garment. I can do these little things and it starts to have this effect in like all these other places as well. But so it's been really interesting for me just as a person to look at like, I work with patients. I'm a DBT therapist by trade. I do a lot of work with PTSD, suicide, self-harm behaviors, a lot of work in the addictions world. I work with a lot of people that have pretty significant behaviors that will show up in sessions. And I can actually like look at my watch and I go, wow, like I had that response in session. It's really been a very interesting experience just in its own right. Understanding what are your triggers and how does it affect you. So we're hoping that we can learn some new ways to manage stress now. So here's what I want you to do. I'm not part of this. I think this is kind of the backbone. These are all the things that go into these trainings, but there are some people that are going to set up some breakout rooms for you. Before we do that, what I want you to do is I want you to just take a moment and pause and like really think of a time that's in recent memory where you felt stressed out or overwhelmed. It might be going on this week. It might be today. You might have to go a couple of weeks back. But think about a time that you can really pinpoint, like not just generally, how do I feel when but like the time when I found this out, or the time when that deadline showed up, or that argument my spouse and I had 2 days ago. Like just think about a time that you felt really stressed out. Do you remember what was going on in your body physically in that moment? Do you remember what you tried to do? Did you try to do anything? Sometimes we don't do anything. Sometimes we blank, right? Because our emotions go up, stress goes up, anxiety goes up, fear goes up, and the next thing we know, we can't problem solve. We can't think of anything. Did you do anything that actually worked, that you were able to use, that you consciously used to get your stress level down? And was there anything that you tried that didn't work? We've talked a lot about some of the physical responses people had, so in the interest of time, we can pass through that. What were some of the things you did in that moment you were thinking of that you were going to discuss in your breakout rooms? What were some of the things you did that worked to reduce that stress in that moment? A walk, thinking about the end, thinking about getting through it, okay? Praying, box breathing, stepping away.
Positive self-talk, phoning a friend, talking to a family member, writing things down, napping, stopping the task that's stressing me out to walk away, listening to music, breathing.
Good. So these are things that worked. Okay. Were there any things you tried that maybe weren't helpful? And these might be coping skills that are very helpful in other situations, but in this particular situation, it wasn't very helpful as you reflect back. Cursing, staying busy, avoiding the issue, thinking about it too much. Thinking about the worst case scenario sometimes isn't very helpful at all. Sleeping in, keeping to yourself and not consulting with people. Maybe. Sometimes that can be a good idea. Sometimes that's not such a great idea. Trying harder, keep trying. Sometimes that's not as helpful. Yeah. So it's great that we saw that dialectic. One person said was talking to people was stressful. The other one was saying not talking to people was stressful. I love that. I love that happened, because I think about this and I think about how sometimes our great coping skills actually aren't helpful in some situations. And so as you're going through some of this stuff, you take what you can use and you use it. Sometimes you can't. So a lot of these skills come from a background coming out of DBT. So that is one of the treatments that I do. It stands for dialectical behavior therapy. It was a treatment developed by Marsha Linehan. It's a treatment that's designed to work with people, but I think some of the basic skills, and these are just good coping skills, are a good reminder, and sometimes we forget about them. I have this written on my desk calendar. Thank you. Yeah, sometimes the first thing you just need to do when you're feeling a big emotion, you're feeling really stressed out, overwhelmed, if you're noticing some of those thinking patterns or some of those physical sensations we discuss, is just to stop. Just to step back from the situation, stop doing whatever you're doing, stop the thinking, stop the action, stop doing what you're doing. Just stop and notice what's going on for you, and can you identify what's causing it? What's prompting the emotion? What's the cue that's leading to this emotion? You can take a step back, notice what's going on for yourself. You can say, I'm feeling angry, I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling sad. Just notice what's going on in your experience and then proceed mindfully. Like, think about your consequences. Think In DBT, we have 3 states of mind that they talk about: emotion mind, and they talk about a really logical mind, and they talk about a wise mind. And lots of spiritual practices talk about wise mind. Addictions world talks about a sober mind. You know, this is the truth within you. What avenue is going to consider the long and the short-term consequences in a situation, your values, and what would be best for you in that moment, the most effective thing in that moment for you? It could be taking a break. It could be calling a loved one. It could be going for a walk. It might be staying in the situation, as somebody said earlier, and thinking about the end of the situation. The skills we're going to focus on for the purposes of this week are breathing, techniques for high stress, which is to really reset the emotion system. A lot of these you can probably use with your patients. Some people will use these with high intense emotions, and acceptance related skills. Again, I said earlier that there are some very important other aspects of life, like treating physical illness, your sleep, we mentioned, diet, things like that, that are by themselves, exercise, are going to reduce your level of stress. These are some additional adjunct ideas. The breathing that DBT focuses on is a breathing technique that is a diaphragmatic breathing technique that is designed to reduce anxiety. So it's really designed to disarm the sympathetic nervous system as it's ramping up, as it's kicking in. It's designed to kind of keep it at bay and keep it down. So when you start to feel anxiety taking over, you're feeling overwhelmed, you're starting to feel your chest getting tight, you're starting to notice difficulty with your breathing. This is the skill that I tend to recommend people use. And it's because this is something you can take with you anywhere. So in this one, we're gonna walk through it really quick, and then after that, we'll move on to the other ones. There's some other videos. But when you're doing this, you want to focus on, there's 2 kinds of breathing. There's breathing in your chest, and there's breathing that's kind of in your diaphragm, like in your belly button. So this is belly breathing. So you want to be breathing from your belly. For some people, that alone is very difficult. If you're struggling with that, I recommend you practice on your own. You can lay on like your back on the floor or on your bed, and you can put books on your stomach, and you can focus on trying to breathe in a way that raises the books, not your chest. That's a way you can practice. But in this case, you're going to be inhaling through your nose, and you're going to be exhaling through your mouth, and all this is being done at your stomach. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to actually extend the length of your exhale, because it's actually the exhale that's the relaxing part of breathing. It's not the inhale. The inhale is actually not the relaxing part, which is contrary to what most of us learn, right? Because I don't know about y'all, but I've been taught, like, if you're feeling stressed out, take a couple of deep breaths, go breathe. They don't say take a few long, relaxing exhales. They say take a few deep breaths. So I always learned the wrong way is what I learned. So I had to relearn this for myself. So I'm standing. If I were sitting, I would do it differently. But I'm going to just put my hand on kind of my belly, and I'm going to hold it there. And I'm going to breathe in through my nose. And I'm going to extend my exhale longer than my inhale, but not so far as that I kind of catch. You know what I'm talking about? When you exhale and you like exhale out too much breath, and then that causes you to get tense. So we don't want to go quite that far. So if you take a moment, you can try closing your eyes if you want. And you just take a moment and you just focus on inhaling through your nose, exhaling through your mouth, trying to keep your exhale a little longer than your inhale. You can keep your eyes open or closed. And you do that for a few repetitions. See how you feel afterwards. Now, for people that may have practiced this, you can keep doing this. I don't mind. Put in the chat, what did you notice? Relax and start yawning. I love that. Awesome. Lowers blood pressure. Yes, absolutely. What else did you notice? Lightheaded, okay. Hopefully that's not a great thing. A sense of relief, okay. It shifted your focus. Weights lifted. More calm, more relaxed. The head's a little clearer. You're hearing things around you that maybe you didn't hear earlier. That's being more mindful, yeah. You notice some back pain relief, wonderful. I can take a minute, I can do this in my day as many times as I need. Again, this is just trying to focus on reducing my level of anxiety in the moment. This is not exercise. I can't leave the desk. I can't, right before I'm supposed to be on in this presentation, I'm not allowed to like walk away and say to Ayla and Aiden, like, hey, I'm feeling anxious. I think I'm gonna go for a walk. I'm gonna come back, like, I don't know, maybe about 1 o'clock when I'm done. I can't do that, right? I have to be on here. So this is something though I can use like literally as I'm waiting for the camera to flick on and I'm watching the little countdown as the numbers are going up. So this is a form of a coping skill that you can use kind of anywhere in your life. Now, I will say this, if you aren't used to using breathing as a coping skill, or if you notice that your breath gets very dysregulated when you get really anxious or overwhelmed or stressed out, I recommend practicing this when you're not stressed out and overwhelmed and anxious, so that if you can do it, so that you start to learn how to do it when you're more clear-headed, when your emotions are down. It will be harder when your emotions are up and you're stressed out. The temperature is a skill that comes out of DBT that is about activating the mammalian dive response. This is a skill that I teach clients that struggle with panic attacks. I will say before we introduce this, if you experience issues like heart conditions, or if you have migraines, sometimes this skill can actually induce a bigger problem. So we don't recommend, I don't ever recommend anyone using this skill or practicing this skill if they have a heart condition until they consult with their physician, or if they get migraines. I had a supervisee that I was working with that actually taught me this one. She got migraines. This wasn't on my radar. She did it in a skills training one time, and she got a migraine. And so I was like, okay, good to know. So I will give you that with a caveat. But this skill actually resets your emotional system. Essentially, it crashes. If you think about a computer, this is like hitting Control, Delete, and restarting the whole system. It crashes everything very quickly. Something you can teach your clients, something some of you may use. It is specifically designed to crash the system. That is it. So it's activating your parasympathetic nervous system. So again, going back, you're stressed out, you're overwhelmed, you're feeling anxious, you're maybe really irritable, angry. You need to reset the system. So this is going to disarm that sympathetic nervous system by activating the parasympathetic nervous system. So this is a video that one of the staff members that was working on this put together, I guess, Ayla, a year or two ago. Adam, yes. So Adam Engler will demonstrate what this looks like. Again, if you want to practice on your own, you go ahead and do it. I recommend, though, if you have heart condition or if you get migraine headaches, that maybe you don't do this. The three main components of this, and you will hear him highlighted, are the fact that you get cold water kind of in this area, that you're able to hold your breath, and that you get in a prone position. All three have to be present or this will not work.
Today we'll show you 2 ways to activate the dive reflex. In this first method, you will get your cheeks and eyes cold using the cold gel pack or pint-sized plastic storage bag filled with cold water. Put the cold pack on your face, close your eyes, and bend over. You will need all 3 components of the cold, bending over, and holding your breath to get the dive reflex effect. Hold this for about 15 to 30 seconds. Now remove the cold pack and assess how you feel. If you have an app that can record your heart rate, check it before and after this exercise. In the second method, you'll need a large bowl or pot of cold water. but make sure the temperature of the water is not so cold that it stings your face. Have a towel available to dry your face when you're finished. Here is the area of your face you will submerge in the water. You can take a breath or not before you put your face in the cold water. Once you submerge your face, hold your breath and keep this position for at least 15 to 30 seconds. Now, assess how you feel. Again, if you have an app that can register your heart rate, take it before and after this exercise. Thank you for your interest in the HOPE WWR demonstration.
Intense exercise, another one. We actually saw some people kind of alluding to this. I'm not going to go into this terribly much, mainly because of the time that we have. I'm trying to be cognizant. Ada needs to get on for her end. But intensive exercise, as far as this reducing stress in this case is concerned, is increasing your heart rate up to 55 to 70% of your maximum heart rate. You can figure out your maximum heart rate generally through an equation. If you take 220, which is 220 beats per minute, and you subtract your age, that will give you roughly your maximum heart rate. If you then multiply that number by 55% and 70%, that will give you a range. So what you want to be able to do is exercise with your heart rate in that range for the purposes of using this skill to reduce your stress. For people that don't monitor their heart rate a lot, this is not a heavy, hardcore workout in any way, shape, or form. For most people, this is walking. If you go for a brisk walk, you're probably going to hit this in your heart rate, unless you are an athlete that trains regularly or a high-level runner or something like that, or a swimmer. You're probably going to just be fine with a walk, which is why we saw so many people, anecdotally, I think, say that they go for walks as a coping skill that helps. It's because they're getting this intensive exercise. The next skill that they have in DBT that kind of helps with this is called paired muscle relaxation. It is a mindfulness activity. So the whole idea of this skill is to actually notice the difference between your muscles when they're under stress through contraction versus when they are relaxed and they're loose. So I remember seeing several people in the chat mention they were talking about noticing the physical sensations of tension in their neck and in their back and in their lower back and in their chest. So the idea here is you're tensing and holding the tension in muscle groups, and then you're letting go, and you're paying attention mindfully. So you're really noticing the difference in the muscles when they're under tension versus when they're relaxed.
Take a relaxing breath in and let it out slowly. Keep breathing slowly in and out. We're going to tense muscles on our inhalations and relax them on our exhalations. You can keep your eyes open or closed, whichever you prefer. Notice the tension and relaxation in your body overall. Open your mouth wide and stretch your face. Inhale, then exhale and relax your face and mouth. Inhale and pull your eyebrows close together and tense your forehead. Now exhale and relax your forehead and eyebrows. Inhale as you shut your eyes tightly and tense them. Now exhale and relax your eyes. Inhale, tense and scrunch your nose, your cheeks, and upper lip. Exhale and relax your nose, cheeks, and upper lip. Inhale and press your lips together and pull them towards your ears. Exhale and relax your lips. Inhale with your teeth together, push your tongue to your upper mouth. Exhale and relax your teeth and mouth. Gently inhale and exhale and feel the relaxation in your face. Now turn your attention to your neck. Push your chin to your chest. If you can, press your neck into your chair or the floor. Inhale and hold tension in your neck. Exhale and relax your neck. Bring your shoulders to your ears and tense them while you inhale. Squeeze your shoulders and exhale and relax your shoulders. Take a deep breath in and wiggle your body and exhale. Compare how you feel to how you felt before this exercise. This exercise can help you recognize the tension in your body and learn to let it go.
Last kind of thing, and you've got this in your notes, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time that we have, would be this idea of maybe radically accepting what's going on in the moment, not actually trying to change things. It's kind of about reducing your stress and your suffering through experiencing emotion, experiencing what's going on in the moment, noticing that you're fighting or questioning reality, reminding yourself reality is what it is, considering the causes of reality, and a practice accepting with your whole body, which is your mind, your body, and your spirit. Work-related stressors, our environment, where we work, become part of the stress in our lives as helping practitioners, right? We have all kinds of different demands placed upon us. We have all kinds of environmental things that are going on around us at our jobs. I remember I worked for several years in an environment at a local nonprofit that had concrete, like kind of cinder block walls, and it was a drop-in center. And the number of people that came into the drop-in center on a regular basis it was a very loud place to be. Just voices echoed and it bounced off of and reverberated off the walls. And it created a lot of stress for me. I remember looking when I was young in my career, like going on and Googling, like, can being in a loud environment have direct impacts on blood pressure? I specifically remembered like reading that. And I just remember being like, wow, this is like tied in with stress. And this is not just the job, this has to do with the environment. So when I think about work-related stress, I'm thinking about all these things, the demands that are placed upon us by our agencies, by our employers, the control we actually have, which we don't have a lot of control, our relationships within the workplace. Hopefully you're in a supportive environment, but our relationships are going to directly impact our well-being. I think a lot of people noticed this after COVID, when we all got locked down and suddenly people didn't have relationships in their lives. They, I think, started to look at relationships in their lives a little differently. Some ideas for managing stress in your workplace. Prioritize tasks in your work environment. What has to get done now? What needs to get done first, what needs to get done second. It may not be the activity you want to do, but if it's the most stressful one, it's the deadline hanging over your head. If you prioritize it and get it out of the way, you're going to drop your stress level the minute it's done. It's going to help you. Learn to say no. But how many people need to learn to say no? How many people say yes too frequently at the job, and they are willing to pile on more and more and more, and doing that ends up increasing our stress level. Check your own expectations. I think we go into life, we go into anything with our idea of what things are going to look like, and sometimes that sets us up for stressors in and of itself. So managing our own expectations can be helpful. Practice facing stressful moments. Lean into stressful situations that allow you to grow and that allow you to manage your own stress levels. Lean into change. Frequently, we resist change, which makes things so much more difficult. When we're trying to push away change, when we're trying to push against change, sometimes that creates more stress by itself. So sometimes learning to lean into change is the answer. And create a social network. More and more, they're learning that having a supportive social network is a huge buffering agent against stress and stress-related disease. Last thing is a DBT skill, which is known as being one mindful, which is just focusing your entire attention in one moment on what you're doing. With that, I will hand it over to Jaden.
All right. Thanks, Scott. Scott ran through some of the work-related stressors, and we can cover some of those in more detail as we have more time. I'm wondering if folks, any of those work-related stressors Scott has just mentioned, resonate with you all. Some seem easier to implement in practice. Some seem more difficult. I'd love people's thoughts in the chat. Yeah, leaning into change, right? That's a hard one for a lot of us, myself included. Just thinking about oftentimes in our work environments, right? We have a lot of change and sometimes we don't have control over that, which can make it extra difficult. I'm glad that I'm seeing a lot of things about the exercises that in here are helpful and relatable, and the tips, that's wonderful to hear. The dive reflex, the cold face immersion. So I think, but I'm curious, some of you are talking about some of the skills and tips and strategies we just talked about. You know, in the beginning, we asked you to think about a time when you were stressed and kind of how you handled that. You know, thinking about some of the things we covered now, do you think any of these tips or skills may work? You know, maybe why not? If any of these are new to you, would love your thoughts. And I think some of you are already kind of addressing that in the chat. I see what you say. When I worked as a therapist, it's hard with back-to-back study, it's hard to be intentional with those breaks, right? So sometimes it is about how we, and then you're saying when you worked in a different setting, you've been able to implement more easily. Yeah, so much, right, relates to the demands of our job, the schedule, how much control and autonomy we have over that or not. I see you talk about prioritizing reasonable expectations. Yeah, your last job had you stay late almost every day, but this one doesn't, right? And so, yeah, I think figuring out what's reasonable, right, to accomplish within a day's work. And again, sometimes we do have control and sometimes we don't. Kathleen, I see you saying paired muscle relaxation will be easier to incorporate at work. The guided meditation was very helpful. In the moment, I forget these skills are available to me, so they're very many helpful reminders. I look forward to trying the cold immersion. Yeah, I think that's, you know, what Scott has been saying, right? Is like in the moment when we're stressed, sometimes it's very difficult to remember that we have these skills or access them sort of in the moment. And so sometimes I think even, you know, like you all are willingly spending an hour and a half on your lunch break just to be reminded of some of these things that we're already aware of, I think can be super helpful in trying to think about how we can address workplace stress, right? Or better manage it or handle it or how it impacts us. Stacey, I see you saying practicing radical acceptance is the hardest thing, but the most effective for me when I'm able to accept. Yeah. Okay. Any other thoughts about or questions related to workplace stress management? Any of the skills you have questions about that Scott covered? I appreciate all the positive feedback in the chat. And we do really appreciate your time